Hello, this presentation is Why Course Design Matters, Seeing the Student Perspective in New Faculty Orientation. My name is Bethany Schultz, and I am the Director and an Assistant Professor at Northwest Nazarene University in the Instructional Design and Technology Department. In this presentation, I'm going to give you some context of how I facilitate new faculty orientation in the areas of course design, and then I'm going to demo you an activity that I do with new faculty each year to help them understand the student perspective of the impact that course design has on students in the LMS. Northwest Nazarene University is a small university. We are in Nampa, Idaho, just outside of Boise. We are a religious institution and a regular traditional liberal arts institution. We have about 2,000 undergraduate, online, and graduate and doctoral students. So between our non-traditional programs and traditional programs, we have about 2,000 students. We have around 200 full-time faculty and then part-time adjuncts. And we have an instructional design team of 3. So we are a small and mighty team of 3. I'm going to describe the new faculty orientation today and just one piece of it, but I want to give recognition that my 2 colleagues in our instructional design team do a lot of heavy lifting in onboarding new faculty and adjuncts, whether it's orienting them to the LMS that they've never used before, helping them get their classes set up, reviewing for accessibility, giving them pointers on their course design. The work for onboarding new faculty is a lot more than what I'm going to present to you, and I want to give them recognition that I don't do this independently of, I certainly have some help. So the new faculty orientation at our institution, we have one event in each August. It's a full day orientation where they have presentations from different groups on campus. It used to be 2 full days, and we've narrowed it down to 1 so that they had more time to actually prep their courses. All new full-time faculty, both online and face-to-face, participate in this formal orientation. We don't have a formal orientation like this for adjuncts, but we do work one-on-one with them as they get onboarded online. And then after this full day orientation session, they have a monthly session throughout their first year where some of the offices come back and review information or answer questions since they're just overloaded each August. So my role in this is I have a slot in that first full day orientation, and then I come back a little bit later for one of those monthly sessions to answer questions after they've kind of got started in their classes and might know some more questions to ask when they're not feeling so underwater just getting their courses prepped. This session used to be a very click-by-click, here's how you use Canvas, which is the LMS that our institution uses, and it was all over the board with new faculty if they had used an LMS before, if they were already familiar with Canvas, or if they really needed a heavily hands-on approach to training in the LMS. So I decided to come at it at a slightly different approach and then identify those who needed the really hand-holding click-by-click orientation to schedule a separate time for that. A lot of my research as a faculty member is looking at different course design aspects from the perspective of the student. One of the silver linings of COVID is that myself and some colleagues had the opportunity to interview our traditional students about their experience with remote learning, and interviewing them was very insightful of how they used the LMS, how they viewed classes, how something that seems so practical or crystal clear to us as instructors, students can perceive it very differently. So everything that I share with new faculty is related back to the student experience and the student perspective. It's data driven in that we have poured over course evaluations, both either in my research or as a department. We review course evaluations for course design, recommendations, suggestions, things that students do and do not like about course design. We've conducted some student interviews We regularly send out a Canvas satisfaction survey to students to get ideas of what do you want to see in your Canvas shells from instructors. And so I use that data to inform what I present to faculty in this new faculty orientation session. Again, the student experience is paramount. I can do something well-intended as an instructor, but if my students aren't receiving that, they're not learning to the degree I want them to learn, they're not engaged to the degree I want them to learn, and so everything I discuss ties into our students' experience. And it's actually pretty powerful to use your own institutions. Sometimes with research we want to go beyond our institution, and I certainly do that, but what I share with them is specific to our NNU students, so it's relevant to them and they know this isn't just a best practice, this is actually what our students ask for, and it's also aligned with best practices. I want this session to be really empowering for them. We don't have a formal course design process or any requirements for even our online courses that you must use this template or you must use this rubric or framework or anything like that. So I need faculty to really feel equipped and have the desire to do the work. But then it also needs to be practical. They are overloaded with getting their classes ready, so my goal is for them to come away with a few ideas of something that they can implement as they're getting their classes put together, or something small that they want to chew off here at the beginning of the session. Something that you may think is missing from this approach is some very basic understanding of course design, whether that's writing objectives, creating assessments or assignments and activities aligned to those objectives, how to assess the course, engaging with students. And I don't cover those things in this particular session because I am preceded by an education department professor who covers those things with them. It's part of the whole day orientation is that they get a brief introduction to understanding by design, which is the instructional model that our institution uses. And so they get some of that really meaty instructional content before they come to me, which is really talking about the course design implications inside the LMS. So it does take off some pressure for me that I don't have to try to cover all those bases when I only am seeing them for an hour. In this session, I give them a number of handouts. There is a Why is Course Design Important handout, and this really guides my time with them. On one side, as you can see here in this image, it has the main points that I want to cover with them. And then on the flip side of this, there are top 5 things that students, NNU students, want to see in their Canvas shells. So I give this to them so they have a visual. This is also linked in the presentation Google Drive folder so you can see it and use it for your own purpose. I also give them a beginning and end of semester checklist. This is adapted from Canvas, and in the Google Drive folder I've linked the Canvas version of it, which is editable, and it's open for your use and edit. So we have linked our anything that's personal for our institution. And it has things like making sure things are published, modules are organized, grades are really clear, where to submit grades at the end of the semester. So we find this really helpful to guide instructors on here's some basic things to get ready at the beginning of each semester, and here's some things that you should be doing at the end of each semester so your class is ready to teach the next time you're going to teach it. So we offer them this, and they get a link to this as well that has the hyperlinks to some tutorials. We also give them an instructional tools list, which is also linked in the Google folder. This just gives them a list of all the instructional tools that we have available to them. I did this because I usually would get that question of like, do you have Flipgrid? Do you have Camtasia? And it would take up a lot of time, where I can just give them a handout and say, this is what we have available. Let me know if you need to use any of these and we'll get you set up. While others don't want to use any of those, they just want the basic LMS information. So that saves us some time. We also have a contact card that just gives them basic information about our department and what resources we have, including TA help, how to contact us. We have a teaching toolkit in Canvas, so it has a link to that. And so that's what they have in front of them as I do this presentation for them. I when I changed this approach, with student focus, I also wanted them to see it. Sometimes when you see something, you really feel it in a visceral way than just somebody talking at you. And this is a part of change management, of creating a sense of urgency, bringing people to a point where they are willing to change, and sometimes seeing the problem and seeing it from the student perspective can be really powerful. And I have found this to be true. So this year was the 4th year I've done this. And then I've done it in one other context with faculty, and it's pretty powerful, and you're going to experience that in just a second. But what I do is I show them really bad course design, and we do it from the student view in the LMS, and I ask them some basic questions that students would likely ask or need to navigate in the LMS. And it's really bad. And I give them a warning that my intent is not to shame my colleagues. It is a real class. I have adapted it, so you would never know what class it is. But it was actually taught in the format that you're going to see it in. And we talk about what this means for the student, what's the student's perspective of the quality of instruction they're receiving, of the instructor, of the school, if they encountered a class like this. And by pointing out the really bad course design, we can come to some best practices of what to do instead of this. So if you're tempted to just dump everything in files, what's a better approach to organizing those files in Canvas and things like that? So I am going to open up Canvas, and we are going to walk through a really bad course and look at it from the student perspective. So here is my course in Canvas, and I have it as student view, so they would be seeing it from the view of the perspective of the student, which also brings up a good point for them so they know that they can do that. And what I do is I ask some basic questions that a student would have to do in order to navigate this class, and then I let them answer it. Since I'm recording this after Northwest eLearn, and I can't have you answer those questions, I'm just going to describe kind of typically what I hear, and we'll talk through the main points. In the Google Drive, I've also included a facilitator guide, and this is shared out on the Canvas Commons if you have Canvas. So you can use this exact same course, or you can create your own. The facilitator guide has all the questions I ask them, and I usually just ask as many as we have time for, depending on how much they are asking me clarifying questions and we're going back and forth. But I'm just going to demonstrate a couple basic questions that I always go over with them, and then that facilitator guide has the more extensive questions. So the first question I always ask is, where would a student look to find the syllabus? And so typically somebody usually notices the modules first, because it's here front and center, and I say it's great to have the syllabus linked in the modules. It's very clear for students that it's there. One thing that students have given us feedback on is they always look to the LMS for the syllabus. So if an instructor is not placing it in the LMS, it's confusing for students where they would find it, or have to dig through their email to find it, or remember the paper that the professor gave them on the first day kind of thing. So we talk about your syllabus in the course in some manner, and we have some requirements on that, but the modules is a great place for it. They also mention over here the Syllabus Tab, and if you come to the Syllabus Tab, the syllabus is not actually here. This is our template information that tells professors to replace this with your syllabus content, whether that's linked or embedded on the page. It does have the university addendum link that we require professors to include, but it's not actually linked. It is, I think that's because it's our template, but and so we talk about the syllabus addendum. We do actually require all of our professors to place the syllabus on the Syllabus Tab, because our LMS admin data mines this page to collect all the syllabus for the institution for our accreditation. And so if it's not linked here, it shows up as missing in our repository. So we go through those requirements together. I remind them that if you put it on the Syllabus Tab, and you put it in the modules, to make sure you're updating both or you have those linked in some way, so that you don't have inconsistent information. That is something that came up in our student interviews, is students hate when what's in the course does not match what's on the syllabus, and then they have to ask. And students don't like asking those types of questions of their professors. I give this professor praise for having a course resources module. We talk about the modules page, that students really like everything linked on the modules so that they can find everything that they need. So I praise them for having modules set up and published and organized by week. And praise them for having some lockdown browser instructions there at the beginning as well. The next thing I ask the faculty to look at is, we go to week 1 and I ask, what would you do in week 1? If you were a student, what would you expect, or what do you think you have to do in week 1? There's usually some pause while they read it, and all of these are just textbook provided PowerPoints. I've removed them so the course is not known, but that is what was here in this class. I do praise the professor for having some supplemental and professor-specific PowerPoint, but even this one in the actual class just had some basic bullet points on the slides. They didn't have any supplemental notes, or it wasn't recorded over, and so it would be really hard to understand what the professor was adding to the content just with this PowerPoint alone. And the conclusion we come to is, I don't have to do anything, or at least nothing that the professor will know that I've done. You could review the PowerPoints, but the professor wouldn't know if you've reviewed the PowerPoints. There's nothing you have to do with that information in week 1. So I talk about our students during COVID and remote learning, noted that if a professor didn't have them do anything in a specific week, they didn't do anything in that week. So they would deprioritize classes that didn't have weekly assignments. So we talk a little bit about meaningful assignments, not just busy work, but students will prioritize classwork if you have something regularly due each week. We move through week 2, which is very similar to week 1. I do note that he marked exam 1 material, and that is a helpful cue to students to know that all these PowerPoints and the content in the textbook belongs to exam number 1, but then that leads to the question of, where is exam number 1? We move from exam number 1 material to exam number 2, but I do not see exam number 1. Scrolling down, here's exam number 2, but we don't have 1. And when I look over here on my options, if you're familiar with Canvas, there's a quizzes tab that you can have published for students, and there is not 1 available here. Underneath assignments, there is not exam number 1. And when this class was actually taught, this is how it was. It was actually under quizzes. The exam was there. It was just never published or added to the modules. So we talk about the importance of adding everything to the modules, making sure things are published. We say if it's green, it's seen, to remind professors, or to be able to visualize what's published and what's not. And that would be pretty important to have your exam published. We're going to move on through week 3 and week 4, and we have our first non-exam assignment, which is a reflection paper. And I'm going to open this up. Oh, I have already tried an attempt here, but you'll notice that the details for this assignment says no additional details were added for this assignment. There's no instructions on this assignment page. So if I was a student and I give an example of, let's say this was a nursing class, I just worked a 12-hour shift, I had 2 hours before I was about to pass out from my day to complete this paper, and I open this up, how would that feel? I would probably be frustrated. I'd probably feel bad that I didn't notice it earlier, and if I have it faced with a deadline, now I have to email the professor and they know I haven't looked at it earlier. But the reality of life sometimes is that you have 2 hours to get an assignment done, and you have some reasonable expectation that when you open up that assignment, there's going to be some instructions there. So we talk about clear instructions. Even if it's a fully face-to-face class, it's really good to have complete instructions and complete information for students, because you don't know the context of how they're taking these classes, and if they don't have time to come up to you after class and ask you questions or email you. I did, when I came across this class, I did go and look in the syllabus. There was no description for this reflection paper in there that would give students a clue. This was all the professor gave. Not a great impression. The last thing that I talk about, the term paper is very similar to the reflection paper, is I ask them how many credits do they think this class is. And most of the time, the guesses I get are 1 credit based on the number of weeks and the amount of content and interaction there is. And this is actually a 3-credit class, or was taught as a 3-credit class. I also ask them, do you think this is a face-to-face or online class? And I normally get the response of face-to-face, that maybe there's only PowerPoint slides here because there's more content in the class, and maybe they're doing activities or assignments in class that aren't in Canvas. The answer is this was a fully online class. I am pleased to say this class has improved since this format of it. This is not its current state anymore, but this is a perfect example of a professor who had a face-to-face class, was asked to teach it online, and this is what he produced as his online class. So yes, these PowerPoints and the lecture notes were probably much more in-depth when he's standing in front of the class lecturing, and he's providing context to those bullet points. The reflection paper, I'm sure he talked a lot about it in class. He probably went through his expectations. He might have handed them a rubric or instructions in class and just didn't post them in Canvas. So we talk about complete information. You cannot assume that students just know what they're doing. A quote from one of our interviews was, I felt like I had to read the minds of my professors because I didn't understand how they had their Canvas shells set up. So we talk about communication, and it's okay to go through your Canvas shell with your students and explain to them why you have it set up the way it is, and tell them where they can find things so that they don't have to hunt for them. Another quote from our interview was, I spent more time looking for things instead of actually doing my assignments, which is not what professors want. You want students to have a clear mind when they are tackling their assignments and not spending an hour looking for the exam that's likely being done at the last minute. So those are some of the basic questions that I asked them during that session, and then they have a chance to ask for clarification and what's a better way to do things. I do usually show them a more complete class, depending on what they ask about or they want an example of. I either pull up one of my classes or I pull up our course template that they can use then in their own classes. And that's the interactive portion of this new faculty orientation. The last remaining time, I have usually about an hour and a half to 2 hours with them in total. And so the last portion of the time in new faculty orientation is for them to pull up their classes and ask more specific questions. So my whole team comes in, we troubleshoot with them, make sure they can get logged into everything, make sure they are actually assigned to all the classes they're teaching that semester, and ask their most urgent questions in order to get their classes ready. In that follow-up monthly session, I usually demo some of the additional instructional tools that we offer when they're a little bit more clear-headed than just the start of the semester. And then I also answer any additional questions they have after they kind of get into their courses a bit more. So that is my presentation on the importance of course design and seeing course design from the student perspective. I think this technique or approach could be used in more areas than just new faculty orientation. It can be very effective if you're introducing a new practice to faculty. If you could do it with non-new faculty, with some more seasoned faculty for faculty development, of looking at bad course design is really effective. And I strongly encourage getting feedback from your institution's students so that you have that information to present to faculty. Sometimes faculty don't want to hear best practices. Some do. Some really want the research and want you to be thorough in the research of what practices you're presenting to them. Others don't care. They have their own way of doing it and they're stuck in their rut and they don't care what the evidence says. However, I rarely come across any instructors who do not have a genuine care for their students and do not want their class to go smoothly for students. So that student perspective can be really powerful in communicating the best practices, in helping things be consistent and clear for students, and can really help you promote best practices with course design among your faculty. All the resources that I mentioned in this presentation are linked in the Google Drive folder for Northwest eLearn. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk with you about my experience more, share with you more resources, or talk through that facilitator guide in a little bit more depth. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for watching.